several years ago, I set off to Berlin to see what was there in the Staatsbibliothek, and I discovered some fantastically exciting pieces. Quantz was a very colourful character. He was orphaned reasonably young. He was looked after by his uncle and grew up as a member of the town band, learning to play virtually every instrument. He began to work as a violinist and an oboe player, and he managed to get time out from his job to visit Italy, which was what everybody aspired to do at that time. He went to Naples, and there he met Alessandro Scarlatti, who had no intention of meeting him. He dismissed all wind players because they played out of tune. But he was persuaded to meet Quantz by the young Hassa, who was also in Naples at the time. And Scarlatti obviously had made a deep impression on Quantz, because it set him thinking about the intonation. And that led him to really rethink the design of the current flutes of the time. The type of flute which would have been around in the 1720s is this kind of wooden instrument which has a conical bore from here downwards and a straight cylindrical head joint, 6 finger holes, 1 key, and with that you can produce all the notes of a 2.5 octave range, all the chromatic notes, but many of them are what we call cross-fingered, where something like an F natural would have this hole here open and all the holes beneath it closed. Same for G sharp. This hole's open, it's very closed. What Quantz came up with was something of a far bigger bore internally. He added a sliding head joint so that you could adjust the pitch. He added an extra key, which you would think would give you an extra note, but in fact one is for E flat and the other is for D sharp. And he differentiated between all the enharmonic notes, so D sharp should sound lower than E flat. That's D sharp, E flat. If I play B major arpeggio with a D sharp, it should sound lower than if I play it with an E flat. You can see underneath the keys, the E flat hole is much bigger than the D sharp hole. The wide bore particularly favoured the bottom register, and Quantz said he really hoped that the flute sound would be clear, penetrating, thick, round, masculine, and withal pleasing. Quantz wrote a rather business-like account of his own life. In fact, the personal details are much more interesting. From a very humble beginning, he had a meteoric rise to stardom. He had travelled fairly widely from Italy to France and in fact to England, where Handel would rather have liked him to stay. In Italy, he survived an attack on his life. The suitor of somebody he was giving some lessons to was rather jealous, and he was almost murdered on one occasion. The circumstances of his marriage are rather entertaining. He went to visit the recently widowed wife of a horn player friend of his who had just died. A sympathetic visit, but she took rather a shine to him, and on some later visit he found her very sick in bed. He was very worried, so he called the doctor, and the doctor couldn't work out what was wrong with her at all. So they called the priest to give the last rites, because all seemed lost. And when she was asked what her dying wish was, she said she'd like to go to the grave bearing the name of Frau Quantz. So he thought, well, why not? So there they were, the priest was there, they were married on the spot, and she jumped out of bed. Absolutely nothing wrong with her at all. It was in Dresden that Quantz was heard by Prince Frederick, who later became Frederick the Great of Prussia. He was there on a state visit with his father, and it was from that initial hearing that both of their lives were changed and inextricably linked. Frederick's father banned all activities which he deemed too effeminate, anything artistic, musical, literary, philosophical. He really hoped his son would become a soldier, run the army, run the country, and he had no artistic leanings himself. So it was actually Frederick's mother who fixed for Quantz to come and give lessons in secret. And Quantz really risked his life on a number of occasions. If he had been discovered, which he almost was on one occasion, he probably would have paid for it very, very dearly. Frederick's life was a very difficult childhood. His father humiliated him in public regularly, both physically and mentally. It all became too much for Frederick, and he attempted to escape, to run away, but was intercepted, and he was imprisoned by his own father for a year, and during that time forced to witness the execution of his faithful companion who had travelled with him. The flute was Frederick's great passion. It went everywhere with him. He would claim to be going out hunting, and he would take the flute out and play it outside in the woods. Even in prison, he managed to get his flute smuggled in, and in later life he even took the flute to war with him. And really it was his solace. He would play duets with his sister, and they called their instruments the Principe and Principessa. Eventually, Quantz came to join Frederick once he became king on a very handsome salary. He was repaid for his loyalty in earlier years. And once he had ascended the throne, Frederick was really at liberty to set up his own orchestra, he built an opera theatre, and every evening when there was no opera performance, he would perform to his court. Quantz was in charge of the music, and almost all the music played was probably by Quantz, hence the jealousy and envy of many of his other contemporaries at the court who were equally talented. But from that we have this enormous body of virtuosic flute repertoire. Everybody always asks, could Frederick really play? Well, I think he must have been pretty phenomenal, really, because many of these pieces are really very, very challenging. And although as a teacher one wants to stretch one's pupils, I can't think what Quantz would have achieved by showing him up in public on a regular basis. So I think really he must have had admirable technique, and he was quite a passionate player, I'm sure, from the nature of the music.